but a prepaid cell phone that can be purchased at Walmart or some other place like that. After you've talked that transaction through, throw that phone away and get another one. That will keep you safe from wiretaps.
I would buy a prepaid phone from Walmart and talk on that briefly, and once the deal is made, throw that phone away and get another one. Change your number constantly, and that's what kept me moving. I changed numbers, locations, everything.
I think this is an important time to dispel two of the biggest myths when it comes to undercover officers. Myth number one, police must tell you they're an undercover officer when asked. Lie, lie, lie. That is absolutely not the truth. Police are under no obligation to tell you they're a cop. Now, my guess is that rumor started with the entrapment defense that we used to use years ago. The entrapment defense is not being recognized in courts anymore like it used to be. Again, cops not only can lie, but they will lie. The second myth I would like to dispel is the myth that says undercover cops use drugs. That's not true in 2008. A long time ago, and in Hollywood on TV, all the undercover cops used drugs. Police officers are strictly forbidden to partake of any illegal substances, period. Now, that's not to say there will be that one renegade cop that goes overboard and uses. So please understand this tip as a guideline, and it's not 100% proof positive. But you do know if you're in front of somebody that will not partake, you're probably dealing with an undercover. What cops are trained to do and what they're good at is to simulate drug use. Their favorite method to use is to pretend to be smoking marijuana, and they're simply passing the smoke from their mouth through their nose. To counter this, insist that the person you suspect take a big bong hit. It's impossible to simulate that.
And I'm Mark Emery of Cannabis Culture Magazine here with my good friend and former Texas lawman Barry Cooper. Say hi to everyone.
Hello, everybody.
And take a rip of the Prince of Pot's bong just to make sure everybody knows he's not a cop these days. They're not allowed to do that if they're real Texas lawmen.
And finally, remember, police officers are constantly scanning for evidence. They're logging down license plates. They're trying to take things from your home to put in the evidence room. One of their favorite things to steal for evidence is one of your marijuana roaches. So if you're smoking with 4 or 5 people, keep an eye on who's taking that roach. It could wind up in an evidence room. This section will teach you how to spot informants. They're a little trickier to spot than undercover police officers because these people usually come in the form of a friend. Informants are people that are working very closely with the police to get you busted. The motive behind an informant is either money, they're getting paid to put you in jail, or they've been promised that their sentence will be reduced or completely dropped if they put you in jail.
One of the officers took me back into the bedroom and asked if he could talk to me, and he said, "I'm going to tell you how to make this go away." And I kind of had a suspicion that he was going to talk about, informing on someone else, and that's what he did talk about. He said that he didn't think Ryan seemed very receptive to this idea, but he wanted to talk to me about it and see if maybe I could influence him. That, this kind of thing happens every day, and every day people turn around and inform on someone else to get out of trouble. He told me that all we would have to do was, I think he said 2 different people. We would have to make purchase from 2 different people. And he said that the way it would work is that we would make a purchase, and then they would even let another deal take place so that the dealer wouldn't know it was us, and then they would go in and take them down, and then our charges would just be dropped and everything would go away. And he told me that he had He knew people that were addicted to cocaine and addicted to speed that ended up in jail every couple of weeks, and he would get calls from them saying, okay, I'm in jail, I need to get out, I'll tell you about somebody else. So he said that it was really common, and he promised that nobody would ever find out. So I just said, that doesn't really sound like something that, that we want to do. So I'm going to say no, and I think that my husband's going to say no too. And of course, that's nothing we would ever do.
So let's learn how to spot these terrified and manipulated citizens who are in the jam of their life. During my 8 years of law enforcement, I arrested over 800 people for drug offenses. I was able to turn 95% of those drug offenders into informants. Do not forget that. I was able to do this through lies, fear, intimidation, and manipulation. If I caught a person with drugs, I threatened to place them in prison, seize their home, separate them from their loved ones, take their kids to Department of Services, call their boss where they would lose their job, and if that didn't work, there were times I threatened to plant drugs on them if they didn't inform. Now, I never planted drugs in my entire law enforcement career, but I certainly made people believe that I would do that if they didn't work for me. So remember, informants are very terrified and scared and manipulated people, but they're not trained liars. Through questioning over and over, it's easy to catch them in a lie. Remember that. If it's not already obvious to you, stay away from people that just got busted or have disappeared for a while and then all of a sudden come back into your life and want to know your business. I don't care if it's your brother or your sister or your best friend. If they've recently been in trouble with the law, absolutely do nothing illegal in front of them. Don't be afraid to bring up the subject of informants in front of somebody you suspect. Bring the subject up and then watch for the body language. Remember, police are always on their own clock. During a drug operation, they're always the one in charge. So if you're dealing with somebody that constantly has to get an okay from their partner, they're probably partnered with the police. And remember, a big job of an informant is to introduce you to an undercover operative. So always be suspicious of new faces. Just like vice cops, informants are often wired with hidden cameras or audio recording devices. These cleverly designed devices come in the form of pins, hats, belt buckles. They can be anything, so they're impossible to detect. They're not impossible to counter if you insist on discussing your activities in a swimming pool or a sauna. The water cancels out all that technology. If you find it difficult to get into water to discuss a transaction, you can always whisper any incriminating evidence in their ear. This assures nothing's recorded. And unlike drug cops, informants will use drugs and they will put drugs on the street. They usually sign a long form agreeing not to do anything illegal, but I've seen very few that hold to that rule. And finally, the tip that I hold dear to my heart. It's not paranoia if it's really happening. So be paranoid because it's happening. The undercovers are out there and the informants are out there trying to place you in prison. We live in a nation that guarantees against cruel and unusual punishment. We here in the Middle East, if you steal something, your hand gets cut off. We think that's cruel and unusual. Go into our prisons and ask these drug offenders that have been sentenced to 99 years and give them the option. We cut your hand off or you stay here for 99 years, and every one of them will gladly get their hand cut off. I understand why a mother would inform to the police to keep their own child out of prison. And that's what's sad about this drug war. We've turned our nation into a nation of dishonorable people. I would like to see us rebuild in the communities the characters of honor, loyalty, and respect. And until we end this drug war, people, that's not going to happen. Here is another controversial topic. I'm going to share with you how to sell marijuana to another party and never get raided. The number one tool law enforcement uses to raid your home is to get an informant to go to your house and make a purchase. The informant then takes the contraband to the police officer. That police officer draws up a search warrant, and within 72 hours, you get raided. Never ever sell marijuana from your house. There is a safe way to sell marijuana, and I'm going to show you how. In all my years in law enforcement, I've never heard of anybody being busted using this method. The only way you can really get caught using this technique is if you're dealing with an undercover officer or an informant. And even then, they can't raid your home because your house wasn't involved. First, place your stash in a black trash bag. Then take your stash away from your home to an isolated area. Hide your stash where you can easily find it later, but secure enough where animals won't drag it away and strangers do not discover it. Communicate with the buyer. Try using code words if you're using a telephone without sounding too much like you're talking in code. Return to your hidden stash, making sure nobody followed you and nobody's nearby. Take only what was ordered. Make certain to wipe your fingerprints off the large bag before resecuring. As you drive off looking for a notable landmark, be certain to wipe your fingerprints off the smaller bag of contraband. Make the drop and drive away to meet your customer. Upon meeting the customer, say, "Hey, thanks for paying me back that money I loaned you." Take the money and whisper in his ear where the drop point location is. It is also important for the customer to be safe during this transaction. So follow along as I teach how to retrieve the stash. When arriving at the drop point, walk straight to the stash and pretend to pick it up. Return to your auto and drive away. If the cops are involved in this deal and are waiting for you to arrive, they will bust you within minutes of leaving. Of course, they will have no evidence because you left the true contraband at the drop point. If you did not get busted driving away, it is then safe to return and recover your purchase. Make certain to watch Traffic Stops Volume 1 to learn how to drive your stash safely. When I was a police officer, SWAT teams were very rare. Now it seems every town has a little SWAT team.